You won the Rookie of the Year award. You made your first All-Star team a year ago. Now people around the league are talking about you taking the next jump to becoming a top 10 player in the league. I know you've never been one to back away from a challenge. What kind of expectations do you set for yourself individually going into year 3?
It's high. The way I look at it within myself, why not? Why can't I be the MVP of the league? Why can't I be the best player in the league? I don't see why. Why?
At number 10, the 2010-11 Chicago Bulls. This was the team that brought basketball back to the Windy City. Every time you stepped on the floor against these guys, it was going to be a rough physical matchup. They had a superstar, a great coach with great role players. They were set up for instant success that nobody saw coming going into the 2010-11 season. This was the peak of the post-Jordan Bulls. It was a long, painful road to this point for the fans and the organization. The Bulls of the 90s were a rock band, a simply dominant basketball team. A team that you couldn't keep your eyes away from, headlined by the greatest player of all time. This dynasty captured something legendary. They won 3 straight championships from 91 to 93. Then Michael Jordan retired, then unretired, and again led the Bulls to 3 straight championships. The Bulls won a then NBA record 72 wins and beat the Seattle Supersonics, and then won 2 more rings back-to-back against Karl Malone and the Utah Jazz. And Jordan capped off their 6th championship in dramatic fashion.
17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan open. Chicago with the lead. Who knows what will unfold in the next several months? But that may have been the last shot Michael Jordan will ever take in the NBA.
We do this again for the second time. I am here to announce my retirement from the game of basketball. From a career standpoint, I've accomplished everything I could as an individual.
This is my 5th time. I do it 6, 7, 8 times. Yeah, I would do it again.
My love for the game is very strong, and it's hard to give up that love, but this is a perfect time for me to walk away from the game. I'm at peace with that.
Even though this team was a masterpiece on the court, if you step beyond the curtain, you would have wondered how this group kept it together for this long. It was a ticking time bomb that could go off at any minute. Egos killed this legendary team from winning even more championships, and it almost kept them from winning the last 2. According to Tim Floyd, the coach of the team after '98, said he had a conversation with the owner Jerry Reinsdorf about taking over for Phil Jackson after the '96 championship against the Sonics. Obviously, Floyd didn't want to be a part of the potential downfall of the dynasty. Floyd knew this team was too great and too popular to break up. There was a good chance that this dynasty doesn't even win the last 2 championships. The infamous Jerry Krause wanted to mess up a work of art, a masterpiece. If the Bulls fans hated Krause during the championships, they hate him even more with more stories coming out. Jerry Krause was hired as the general manager in 1985, a year after the team drafted Michael Jordan. There's no doubt that Krause deserved credit for building a good supporting cast around Jordan, but his big ego and his constant need to let everybody know he was the most important piece of the dynasty ended this ride before it needed to. Everyone knew that the '98 season was going to be the last for Jordan, Phil Jackson, and Scottie Pippen. Jerry Krause finally got what he wanted. The team won its 6th championship, and those 3 were gone, and Tim Floyd was the new head coach of the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls went from the best team in the league to one of the worst, if not the worst team in the league. They went from winning 62 games in '98 to winning 13 games, then 17 games, and then 15 games. They didn't win at least 30 games until the 2002-03 season. The Bulls were constantly in the lottery year after year. It was a combination of bad decision making and bad luck. Drafting players like Elton Brand, Tyson Chandler, Jamal Crawford, and Ron Artest, and trading them away only to see most of them become all-stars on other teams. Draft picks were wasted, and the team could not find their identity. Jerry Krause's last year with the Bulls was in 2003, and that's when they slowly started to turn things around. John Paxson was the new general manager, and he was later promoted to vice president of basketball operations. This team made solid picks in the draft like Kirk Heinrich, Ben Gordon, and Luol Deng, but they were still in search for a superstar. This team was referred to as the Baby Bulls. They were a scrappy, defensive-minded team, and they finally made the playoffs in 2005. Meanwhile, there was this phenom close by at Simeon High School, and anybody that watched him play for a second knew he was a once-in-a-generation type of point guard. His athleticism, combined with his speed and quickness, was never before seen at the point guard position. This was the type of player that the Bulls needed to get back to championship contention. The Bulls kept making the playoffs every year. There was a constant theme to the draft picks made by John Paxson. He often drafted players who played in the Final Four. And during the 2007 draft, that didn't change.
I've had many dreams about this for real, literally. And it's just exciting to have the draft in your hometown too. I mean, we're going to the NBA. We're going to the NBA.
With the 9th pick, the Chicago Bulls draft Joakim Noah from the University of Florida.
Paxson wanted a proven winner, and that's what Joakim Noah was. He was coming off winning back-to-back national championships with the Florida Gators. The Bulls took a step back during the 2007-08 season as they won only 33 games and missed the playoffs. And with only a 1.7% chance of winning the lottery, the Bulls got the bounce they needed.
The 2nd pick goes to the Miami Heat. And that means the number 1 pick in the 2008 NBA draft will be made by the Chicago Bulls.
The Chicago Bulls haven't filled their head coaching vacancy yet, but they will have the number 1 pick to take home with them tonight.
This was an opportunity to return the Bulls back to the top. There were early discussions about which of the top 2 prospects the Bulls should draft, but there was no doubt that the Bulls had their eye on the local point guard to turn things around.
With the 1st pick in the 2008 NBA draft, the Chicago Bulls select Derrick Rose from the University of Memphis.
Now the Bulls had their first franchise player since 1998, a whole decade. Derrick Rose's talent was obvious, but he also had the drive to be one of the best. Not only did he contribute to winning, but he was a box office attraction. He went on to win Rookie of the Year and led the Bulls to the playoffs the next 2 seasons, but lost in the first round both times. The 2010 free agency was big for the NBA, and the Bulls had a chance to get an upgrade to their team to push them over the edge. There were rumors that free agents LeBron and D-Wade gave serious consideration to signing with the Bulls, which would have almost guaranteed the Bulls winning their first championship since the great Michael Jordan left. But the Bulls missed out on the big-time free agents and had to settle for big man Carlos Boozer. It was certainly a big disappointment after being one of the favorites to get one of the 2 best free agents available. Even though they signed Carlos Boozer, their best offseason addition was a non-player, head coach Tom Thibodeau. He paid his dues as he spent 20 years as an assistant coach. He was an assistant to Doc Rivers in Boston when they won a championship in 2008. Defense is what Thibodeau was all about. Since '98, the Bulls didn't even come close to looking like a contender for the championship. Many experts had the Bulls team as a 4th or 5th seed before the season began, and in training camp, Carlos Boozer broke his hand and needed surgery, and he was going to be out for 8 weeks. The Bulls had more than enough to hold it down until he came back. Taj Gibson was more than capable of giving quality minutes as a starter, and eventually many Bulls fans wanted Gibson to be the starter over Boozer. They got off to a mediocre start with a 9-8 record, and that was mostly because of injuries, a new system, and a difficult road trip that the Bulls always had early in the season. The Bulls needed somebody to step up and lift the franchise to heights that they never been at for more than a decade. That guy was Derrick Rose, the Windy City Assassin. It was his 3rd season in the league, and he knew he could be one of the best. Derrick Rose was different. Nobody in NBA history played like him. He displayed rare quickness and speed, and also had the grace and body control to finish from any position around the rim. He always found the smallest cracks in the defense to slide by. He wasn't a player that was out of control. He knew when he needed to use his speed and quickness and when not to. Once he saw an opening, it only took a split second to get there. And he also had a 40-inch vertical. Somebody who would not hesitate to challenge you at the rim. It was always a joy to hear the Bulls play-by-play announcer Stacey King talk about the greatness of D. Rose.
That's your point guard, Neil Funk, going upstairs that ball. Woo! Was that an elevator? That was an elevator all the way to the top floor, to the penthouse. This is a man's game. No boys allowed. This is a man's game, Funk. Turnover, and it's showtime. Here comes D. Rose. Oh, too big, too strong, too fast, and just too good.
Here comes Derrick again, into the lane, falling, firing stars.
It's showtime! MVP, baby! Give it to him!
Oh my goodness.
That boy is bad, Funk! That boy is bad! Windy City Assassin! At the Bradley Center tonight. Ice water in his veins.
Rose. Oh, he just lost that and he scores.
Stop it, D. Rose. Swerving and serving.
He had some of the best catchphrases in all of basketball. Every opponent knew how the Bulls was going to beat them. They were going to focus most of their attention on D. Rose and let his teammates beat them. But regardless of that attention, D. Rose still took over games, and there were other times when the supporting cast would elevate their game and lead the team to victory. Thibodeau established a solid rotation early on and let the players fall into a given role. He was a coach that didn't mind keeping a non-starter in the game during winning time. There were plenty of times where players like Boozy and Joakim were on the bench in the fourth quarter. The mark of a good bench is when the team doesn't give up a big lead or don't fall behind more after most of the starters are out of the game. The Bulls had a great bench unit. On any given night, this team could go 11 deep. Instead of trying to maintain the production of the starters, sometimes they played better than the starters, often extending leads even more. The bench mob consisted of C.J. Watson, Taj Gibson, Ronnie Brewer, Omar Ashik, Kurt Thomas, and the best shooter in the league, Kyle Korver. This team came at you for 48 minutes every night. Joakim Noah was the defensive anchor and emotional leader on the team. What he lacked on offense, he made up for on defense, rebounding, passing, and leadership. He provided a long, athletic, active body in the paint that disrupted the offense on an opposing team. Boozer provided a much-needed low-post presence that often led to him scoring or getting the defense to converge on him so he can dish it out to an open teammate. It's just amazing how good this team was despite two of their main guys missing a lot of games due to injury. Boozer missed 23 games and Joakim Noah missed 34 games that year, and the team still dominated throughout the regular season. Luol Deng became so important for this team. He was the Bulls' best two-way player. He emerged as the Bulls' second scorer, averaging around 17 points and added 6 rebounds per game. He was able to play all 82 games and establish himself as a top defensive player at the small forward spot. This team exceeded all expectations. Thibodeau helped them become the best defensive team in the league. They were number 1 in defensive rating and were second in opponents' points per game. That led to the Bulls winning 62 games that year. In his first year, Tom Thibodeau was awarded the Coach of the Year trophy, and it was well deserved. He won 100 games faster than any coach in NBA history. And there was another big award that was announced.
Thank you, Tim Chaney and Kia Motors. Derrick, you've had a career year so far. You led this Bulls team to the best record in the NBA. You are the youngest MVP in NBA history. And in a league of very valuable players, you are the most valuable, and it is my pleasure to award to you the Kia NBA 2010-11 MVP trophy.
He is the youngest league MVP in NBA history, and he was just getting started at the age of 22. All the naysayers will say LeBron deserved it more, but there are a lot of reasons why Derrick Rose deserved it. Boozer and Noah missed a combined 57 games. The Bulls defeated the Heat in all 3 regular season matchups. Dwayne Wade was still a top 3 player at the time as he averaged 26 points per game. And the Bulls had the best record in the league. Going into the playoffs, anything less than a trip to the conference finals for the Bulls was going to be a disappointment. After beating the Hawks and the Pacers in the first 2 rounds, they matched up with the NBA title favorites, the Miami Heat. The matchup everybody saw coming. The Bulls got off to an impressive start in Game 1. They absolutely dominated the Heat in the second half. The Bulls suffocated the Heat on defense and dominated them on the glass. Derrick Rose finished with 28 points as the Bulls blew out the Heat by 21 points. And that game was capped off by a monstrous dunk by Taj Gibson. And the United Center was rocking. And it looked like the Bulls had the edge in the series. But sadly, this was the only game the Bulls would win in the series. The big three for the Miami Heat stepped up and played like superstars. They were able to load up on Derrick Rose and force him to take tough shots and dared any other player to beat them. The Bulls lost in 5 games to the Heat to end their great season. There was so much anticipation for the Bulls the next year. They wanted a rematch with the Miami Heat. They upgraded at the shooting guard position with Richard Hamilton instead of Keith Bogans. And they had the hunger and experience they needed, but sadly they were not given the opportunity.
Look, we're looking to sweep you guys. You wanted us. You were crying out that you bypassed the harder team in Miami Heat.
Rose came down bad on his left foot. See him holding onto his knee and down. He was flying and he came down wrong on the left foot. Now whether it was an ankle or a knee, I do not know. There's Coach Collins out there and all those teammates running, and this, with the injury, we just talked about the 26 games he has missed with an assortment of injuries, and now holding a knee late in a game that is already decided for all intents and purposes.
And I'm sure everyone around the country is going to say, why was he in the game?
One of the most devastating moments in the last 20 years of the NBA. Derrick Rose was never able to maximize his potential. He was the superstar that LeBron was going to have to worry about the most. D. Rose could have kept LeBron and the Miami Heat from winning those 2 championships. Rose had the potential to be the best player in the NBA, and he would go down as a superstar that was held back by injury. And I'll leave you with a remake that I created of the D. Rose Tupac commercial that was aired in 2015.
See, you wouldn't ask why the rose that grew from the concrete had damaged petals. On the contrary, we would all celebrate its tenacity. We would all love its will to reach the sun. Well, we are the roses. This is the concrete. These are my damaged petals. Don't ask me why. Ask me how.